Good afternoon, dear friends, and welcome to this amazing moment here at the SSB. Still broadcasting online to all of the viewers. Also making this available, the moment and these talks, these amazing teachings that we have here afterwards, so we can actually go back to it. And why not to say and remind everyone that today is the first day of spring. So happy spring to everyone. We made through winter. And today we have an amazing friend here with us, starting her first or giving her first talk here at the SSB, someone who has been studying with us, working hard with us for some time now. But before we announce and before we bring her to the screen, let us do what we usually like to do so we can acclimate ourselves to the moment, as well as with our dear Creator and with one another. As always, we like to read a passage of the book Happy Life by the Spirit Joana de Angelis through the hands of the medium Divaldo Pereira Franco. And Joana de Angelis says the following: learn the lessons of life, but particularly learn from your own experiences. Do not believe the siren songs that seduce and drag you into the abyss. If the alcoholic wants to free himself from alcoholism, he will easily find someone ready to serve him another drink, rather than to give him bread. If the smoker wants to give up tobacco, his friends will laugh at him and try to make him continue poisoning himself. If the addict tries to give up his drug, the drug dealer will threaten and blackmail him. If the criminal of any type attempts to rehabilitate himself, those who will conspire against him will swarm around him. So be careful and keep yourself physically and morally healthy. So let us then take this moment to acknowledge this message, acknowledge our presence, but the presence of everyone who's here with us. We also like to invite everyone to think about this moment in a more elevated way, as we connect also with our mentors and mentors of the SSB who has made this moment available to us. We made it thus far. We're here now connected. Perhaps for those who will be watching us as well will be connected with us. So let us pray not only for ourselves, but for everyone. This way, we thank our dear Creator for this amazing moment that we have on our hands right now. The ability to be with one another, yes, through the web, virtually speaking, but we know that we're all connected and we do our best to send our good vibrations to one another, to ask your guidance, dear Lord. And through the teachings that our dear friend Juliana will bring to us, we will connect in a higher mode, elevating ourselves to become a better being, a better brother, a better sister, allowing ourselves also to prepare the way for a better future to come to this planet Earth. As we put the teachings, the reminders that we will receive today into practice, we also would like to send our good vibrations to those who could not be here with us, those who not yet have made this moment available for themselves. Let us send the best of us to those who may be in need. And most importantly, let us send our good vibrations to our dear friend Juliana, who will conduct this message tonight. With your protection and permission, we thank you, dear Lord, and guide us through this evening. And so be it. So as we were saying earlier today, we have Juliana Duarte here with us. Today, this is the first time that she's here with us, talking about the amazing topic that very dear to me and to many of us, reason and faith. But Juliana, as we like to say, is a friend. She has been studying with us, and it's just someone just like you and I who have our struggles, our difficulties, but is trying our best through the teachings of Spiritism to be a better human being. But we always like to give the formal information about those who are speaking here with us so we can understand a little bit more of their background, what they're doing, and so we can connect them in different ways. Juliana Duarte is a physicist and nuclear engineer born and raised in Brazil. She was introduced to Spiritism through her parents, who actively started to study Spiritism when she was a little child. She joined the Spiritist Society of Baltimore a little over a year ago, and she is actively studying with us since then. Currently, she lives in the state of Virginia and works as an assistant professor of the nuclear engineering program at Virginia Tech. Once more, I would like to bring to you this amazing moment, first day of spring, talking about reason and faith. Juliana, please.
Thank you, Liu. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Daniel and SSB, for having me here. I chose this topic, and I think we can share the slides already. Yes. The reason and faith is the base. It is one of the bases of the Spiritism. When you talk about faith in the Spiritism, and that's why what I'm going to be talking a little bit here today, it is because we have the Spiritism and we all here know the basis that of the idea of faith that we can, a rational faith, a faith that we can reason, that we can try to understand according to the Spiritism. When we started studying the Spiritism, the book from Kardec, The Gospel According to the Spiritism, one of the first things that we see in the book, it is the sentence that talks about this unshakable faith. And it's described as the only kind of faith that can stand face to face with reason in all humans' epochs. And I'm sure you're all here familiar with this sentence, and it does make sense for us that if our faith it is unshakable, it cannot contradict the reason, it cannot be put in doubt because of reason or because of science. And this is how Kardec starts the gospel of the Spiritism. In the chapter 1, like in the 8th item, he talked about the alliance between science and religion. And let me in this chapter 1, he talks about this alliance as something in the future. So it is kind of where the reason will turn and the faith will turn. Because if you think that we believe in God and we believe that God has created everything and has created the physical universe and has created the spiritual universe, having the same principle, which is God, neither religion that studies the spiritual world or science that studies the material world, they can contradict each other. So Kardec developed this idea in the first chapter, saying that the faith will turn towards reason, and the reason will find nothing illogical in faith. Having this idea has as the principle the idea that God has created everything, and therefore God cannot contradict each other. And then I put these two pictures here because we cannot picture God. We don't know, we cannot describe it, but we know a little bit of the universe, and I know a little bit of the evolution process, and we know a little bit where we came from in this physical universe. So this is how Kardec starts the Gospel according to the Spiritism. And now if you move to the book of the Spirit's book, when the first chapter as well, the first question, it is what is God? And before I put the answer here in the question, this idea of first cause, it is one of the limits of science, one of the limits of the reason. We may be able to describe a universe using our science, our reason, and we can create simplified models that can describe how the physical universe was created, very close to what you call like Big Bang. If you think about the beginning of this universe as we know today. And even there, when we approach to the very niche of the creation, our science has imperfections. We cannot fully describe that. And we cannot understand what it was happened before. We cannot understand the first cause. That's one of the limits of science. And then it is very interesting because we hear this term first cause when we are talking to scientists. What was the first cause? What happened before? And in the Spirit's book, when Kardec asks in the first question, what is God? You also know the answer for that. God is the supreme intelligence. It is the first cause of all things. And we can ask, also think about limits of reason and science. We can ask ourselves, and I will try to develop this here a little bit today. What Kardec asked to the spirits: can human knows the origin of things? And the answer of this question, 17, it is no. On the earth, God does not allow everything to be revealed to them or to us. There is this shows some large limitation. It shows that here on earth we cannot know everything, but it's also open for the future, any other places, any other planets maybe. So can we know everything? Maybe. Also, other question from the Spirit's book, the question 23rd. What is the Spirit? Basically, what is our principle? So why we can reason? And the answer is the Spirit is the intelligent principle of the universe. Again, so when you talk about reason and faith, there are some apparent contradictions. And I say apparently because during history, and you talk reason and faith or religion and science, these two parts of human has always been in discussion. And the truth is, they don't contradict each other. A lot of science throughout history, they had their own faith, and they were able to think and develop their faith and reason independently of each other. Well, Kardec, when he talks about the islands of science and religion, he talks something beyond that. He talks about one turn to the other, and not being more two separate parts of us as human beings, but being as one thing together. But apparent contradictions that we see today, one, it is related to the idea that we can call the God of gaps. So also through history, we as humankind, in different cultures, in different places of this planet, we have been using God to explain the unknowns. Everything that seems to be supernatural or seems to be unexplainable, we use God or use other supernatural beings to explain that phenomenon that we could not understand. If you think that way, then as the science advance and our knowledge about the physical world advance, God becomes smaller. So the God is only filling the gaps, and as we fill the gap with knowledge, we are pushing God away. And then Spiritism breaks this idea by saying there is no supernatural cause. Again, back into the chapter 1 of the Gospel according to the Spiritism, God created everything. If you start from this principle, one thing cannot contradict the other. And there is no more gaps. We see from a different side that as science advances and as our knowledge advances about the physical world or about the spiritual world, we approach closer and closer to God instead of decreasing that. A second contradiction that I wanted to put here, it is related to our scientific methodology. So today, if someone wanted to describe what is science and what is not science, what we can only explain by what we call faith, we say, well, science is everything that goes through a scientific method. We can produce, we can reproduce, somebody can repeat and reproduce. And we follow this method that is still a quite new method. The scientific methodology as we know today has been developed for the last 4 or 5 centuries. And it is not perfect. It is the best thing that we have to develop our knowledge. It works pretty well, but we know that it is still under development. And that is exactly what Spiritism says. Our science, it is not capable yet. We cannot see beyond what the instruments that we create can show us. So we are still very blind to many things in this world. And this is idea that both science and religion can agree with in this sense, at least in the Spiritism point of view. We can agree that there are much more unknowns than known, even with all the advancements of the last century. So if you think now a little bit about the physical world, and I spent a few minutes in this, just for us to realize the small amount of things that we know that we were able to understand through what we call scientific method. So we know today that we live in this small globe, small sphere, almost a sphere in the universe. That it is small. Today we have the feeling that it's small because we know that the radius of the Earth, it is less than 4,000 miles. So the distance from the center to the surface of the Earth is less than 4,000 miles. And this sphere that we live on, if you calculate the circumference, if you can go from one point to another point of this, to the same point crossing around the Earth, this is only about 25,000 miles. So few centuries ago, we would think that we live in this huge planet or this huge piece of Earth that we didn't know what it was by then. And today, it is not so hard to travel around this planet. And we also know that this planet is spinning in 1,000 miles per hour. And this is a very large velocity. Just for us to have an idea, a commercial aircraft travels about 550 miles per hour. So we are spinning now at almost double of the velocity. If you think about our sun, which is the closest star, now we think we have a larger distance between us and the sun. So the average distance between us and the sun, now it's 92, almost 93 millions of miles away. So we are already talking now a distance that we cannot imagine. And also velocity that you cannot imagine. The Earth is traveling around the sun with a velocity of 107,000 kilometers per hour, or 7,000 miles. And I believe some of you have seen these numbers or these pictures before. But it's always amazing to remind us about this. Every year that I complete my birthday, which is in a few weeks from now, I remember that in that year I traveled 940 million kilometers, so more than 500 million miles around the sun every single year. And that's just amazing. If you think about our solar system, we look to these pictures and we actually realize how small Earth is. So this picture here, it is not in the right distance, the planets and the other satellites, natural satellites, but it is more or less the relative size are more or less correct. So the Earth, it is this small little planet that we live. Let's think a little bit farther. If you think about the galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy, now we are talking about a distance that we cannot picture anymore. It is the distance from one point to another point of a Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years, which means that the light traveling the velocity of 300,000 kilometers per second, you take 100,000 years to go from one point to another point. And we cannot even see the sun here anymore. And this galaxy has 250 billions of stars. And our sun is just one of them. So how many galaxies we have in this universe? We have millions of them, billions of them, sorry, that we know. So if you think about the universe that we can observe, we are talking about more than 100 billions of galaxies in this universe. And each galaxy has these billions of stars and planets. So why I'm talking all of these? So this is about reason and faith, not about physics. But I'm talking about these to connect this to our sense of unknown that connects us to faith. So the question 55 from the Spirit's book is one of my favorites one, where Kardec asks, are all the globes spinning through space inhabited? And the spirits respond, yes. And contrary to what earthly dwellers believe, they themselves are far from being first in intelligence, goodness, and perfection. Nevertheless, there are individuals who think that they know the whole truth of the matter and imagine that this little planet is the only one privileged enough to be inhabited by reasonable beings. Pride and vanity. They fancy God has created the universe only for the earth dwellers. I say that this is one of my favorite questions and favorite answers because it gives us again this idea of how much we do not know. And we can see that through this answer, we can see that to many of the answers in the Spirit's book, in the way that we have these answers, they keep reminding us we don't know anything. And when we look into this universe and these billions of galaxies, it is kind of reaffirmation of we don't know anything yet. Other comparison that we can make, it is one that astronomer Neil deGrasse has done in one of his lectures that caught my attention when he mentioned that the difference between our DNA with the DNA of the gorillas, because of the evolution process, like seven to 8 million years ago, we have a common ancestor. The difference today between our DNA from the gorilla's DNA, it is only 4%. 4%. So in his lecture, he says, imagine a being that is a little bit more evolved than us, that has 4% difference, that have put him in a more evolved position. He could be looking to us as the way they look to gorillas. Gorillas has the intelligence of little kids. They can learn sign language, they can learn some tricks. And other beings that is a little bit more evolved than us could look to us and think, look, how cute they are, knowing quantum physics or knowing the things that they're discovering right now. This is another way to see this. And everything that I have shown about our physical universe in this 5-10 minutes, it was only discovered in the last 5 centuries. And it took several steps. It took Nicolaus Copernicus in the end of the 15th, beginning of the 16th century to understand that the sun was the center of our solar system. It took Galileo Galilei to understand Nicolaus Copernicus, developed it, and also shows that the sun is actually the center of the solar system. And Galileo Galilei is considered one of the fathers of the scientific method. So a scientific method has less than 500 years, the way that we use today. It took after him Johannes Kepler to understand the laws of the planetary motion in our solar system. It took Isaac Newton to describe the laws of motion that moves the bodies. And of course, the last century, also Albert Einstein contributed to our understanding of the physical world with the general theory of relativity, then shows us that this whole universe can be described in a 4-dimensional way, where we have the 3 dimensions that we know, when we have time, and this space universe. The space can bend because of the mass of the bodies. It is this final answer. It is not. This is the best way that we can describe the universe, but it still has so much limitations. There is still so much open questions, things that we cannot explain with what we know in science today. And we can think about the atom too. We can think the first idea of having the atom as an indivisible element was from Democritus, 550 years before Christ. And we didn't come back to this idea until Dayton, studying chemistry and studying that different atoms, you have the different properties. And he defined the atom as a billiard ball. So the idea that Democritus started at 450 years before Christ, it didn't come back until we developed a little bit more of understanding of the different properties of matter. And this only happened in the 18th century. And then in the last 3 centuries, we have J.J. Thomas that understood that we have positive and negative charges in this small atom. So it was not composed of one single element. And then years later, it came Rutherford model, where we had to understand a little bit more about radiation to understand how these positive and negative charges in the atoms you distribute in the atom. And then we have Niels Bohr that developed his model a little bit further, and the quantum mechanics with in the last century with Planck, Schrödinger, Heisenberg, Maxim Bohr, and so on. And the point here is the same. As we develop our technology, our capabilities, as we increase the power of our telescope, our microscope, our accelerators, we can understand a little bit more about our universe. And today we know that the protons and neutrons that we believe a few decades ago that were the elements, particles of this universe, they are not the element because we have the accelerators that can break them into even smaller particles that we call quarks. This idea now it is also discussed in this book, and it is called the Island of Knowledge. The idea of the Island of Knowledge, you can imagine that everything that you know, it is in the island, in the middle of an ocean. As we understand more and more, and here I'm talking about both the physical and the spiritual universe, as we understand more and more, I am talking this, the book basically talk about the physical universe. But the island grows with a knowledge. And as the island grows, the islands become larger and larger because we understand a little bit more and more. The shore of these islands representing the boundary between the known and the unknown. And as the islands grow, the shore also grows, and more questions come to us. We have more and more questions. We couldn't be asking questions about the atom or the structure of the atom if you have not understand radiation, and then we do not have the accelerators today that we can break even the protons and the neutrons inside the atom in even smaller particles. So as we develop our knowledge, we created more and more questions. And I can even give an example of my own research. If a lay person asks what I'm doing in the lab, part of my experimental research, it is on boiling phenomena. The same phenomena that happen at our home every time that we boil water to make a tea, for example. So I am studying in the university the boiling phenomena. Well, you can think, well, but we know the temperature that the water is going to boil. Yes, we know. But there are so many other things that we don't know. We don't know how the bubbles will collide with each other, the size of the bubbles. We don't know if we change the surface geometry, if we increase the amount of heat, if we increase the pressure, if we change the material of the surface. What happened with all this bubble dynamics that generates into the when we boil water, for example. And that is exactly what happened in nuclear reactors. So this is another example, bringing from my research about this idea of as we evolve our knowledge, more and more questions we have. And then going back to the book, the first chapter of this book opens with this sentence from Albert Einstein that says, "What I see in nature, it is a magnificent structure that we can comprehend only very imperfectly, and that must fill a thinking person with a feeling of humility." And this humility, it is exactly what connects us to our faith. So if you go back to the Gospel according to the Spiritism, and now we go to the chapter 19. where Kardec develops a little bit more about this idea of unshakable faith. And he talks about religion faith and the state of unshakable faith. Kardec says, faith requires a foundation, and such foundation, it is a perfect understanding of that which is to believe. In order to believe, it is not enough to simply to see. It is essential, above all, to understand. And he continues, rational faith, that which is based on facts and logic, leaves no darkness in its awake. One believes because one is sure, and no one can be sure unless they have understood. And I had to read this chapter again and again several times because we can question ourselves. We are far away from this perfect understanding. So, how can we have faith? How can we believe without truly understanding the spiritual world or God or all of the phenomena and things that our science today cannot understand? Of course, we know that a lot of knowledge come with us, and we may know in our unconsciousness as we're born. But we can ask ourselves, if we need to perfectly understand something, to have faith on that, what does that mean? What does it mean to have this rational faith? Can I even ever achieve that? Well, in the same chapter, when Kardec describes the power of faith, he gives different, same but in different words, the meaning of faith. He talks about robust faith is the one that provides the perseverance, strength, and resources that enables us to overcome obstacles in little as well in big matters. So faith, it means this confidence that one has in accomplishing something, the certainty of achieving a particular purpose. It provides a kind of lucidity that enables one to see in through the end, to see in thought the end, which is intent, and the means to reach it. The true faith allies itself with humility. That's the chapter 19 of the Gospel, according to the Spiritism. So this is a more achievable way of faith. It relates us to our current states of understanding. So we can today have this confidence based on what we already know, even we don't know everything. And then we can think about it. Again, if you go back to the Spirit's book, when asks where we can find proof for the existence of God, the Spirit's answer: in an axiom you apply to all your science, there is no effect without a cause. If you search for the cause of whatever it is not the work of human being, then reason will answer your question. And I put this sentence at the beginning: we see, but we cannot reason. Because there are still a lot of things in our universe, a lot of things that we can see, but we still cannot reason, we still cannot fully understand. But if you seek, and that's what I believe that this answer is given to us, if you seek to understand, we can find it. And another thing that I wanted to say, it is that idea of the eternal life, as we are immortal beings that will keep being developed, develop ourselves throughout the reincarnations. In other words, I also heard that from Rosandro Kinji in one of his talks, when he talks about this idea that God gives us this impossible goal. He gives us eternal beings or immortal beings an impossible goal to achieve, which is to understand and to both the spiritual and the physical universe, which is to be as good and love as much as God does. It is it is what the laws of God, God's law of progress tells us. And also, I put here the laws of nature and the laws of progress, because this is what we're destined to. We are destined to the moral and intellectual progress. The Spirit's books also says that we can never move backwards. We can stay stagnated for centuries or millennia if you want, but at some point there's a force that is going to pull us away in direction to God. So I think I went a little bit faster than planned, but I have a video that I wanted to show as I talk a little bit more about this idea. And this is from the Hubble telescope that shows the image throughout the last years, decades, about all of these discoveries that open so many questions and gives us so many answers. And this idea that it is in that book, Islands of Knowledge, even though he's only talking about the physical world, but this idea that connects us to the mystery, to the unknowns. It is what moves us in science and what moves us in our faith. The unknown, the questions. This is what moves us forward to understand more. And I think it's just amazing. Even though science moves very slow, progress very slow in the understanding. It took centuries, thousands of years for us to know this little bit that we know today here. It is amazing that today we also see science telling us the powerful of doing good, of forgiveness, of having self-compassion. We see, we understand a little bit of our brain and our body, which is not a complex object of study, but we see that goodness and charity and love and compassion are things that do well to our health. And this, at least from my point of view, it shows exactly what Kardec was saying in the first chapter of the Gospel. It shows that even though we have different paths, we have different ways to have our own faith, the science is this uh, open questions that are endless. We are moving towards understanding that we have to help each other for the survival of the planet. We have to love each other, as Jesus said 2,000 years ago. If you wanted to this planet to survive, to be sustainable, we have to understand through science as well that the solution is not only about technology, it is not only about advancing our knowledge, it is what we do with that. If you don't look to each other, as we are doing now in the middle of this pandemic, and care about others in other countries, in other states, if you don't think about your neighbor, it is a matter of survival. If you think about climate change, if you don't combine our efforts and think about solutions that are sustainable, not only for me here, but for my family in Brazil, for people in Africa, people in Asia, uh, we were not going to solve this problem. And I see this, and that's my hope, that this is the beginning of this alliance between religion, not necessary as we understand today, but the basics of what Jesus said 2,000 years ago, the basics, the more fundamental law to love each other and help each other. That's the way that we're going to progress. So, Leo,
Thank you, Gianna, for this amazing reminder that you close here with us. But most importantly, this knowledge that you brought with us, that reason is walking hand in hand with faith, right? And with the understandings that we have, the troubles that we face, right? And the realizations gives us more faith to continue in our path, right? As you mentioned, I mean, we look back and we see all these different discoveries and the struggles that we went through in the past, believing certain things that nowadays it's like, really. If we look back, right, it's definitely a great reminder, for us to keep faithful, that we will, more discovery, more good, great things will come, and we will be developing ourselves in many ways. And I thank you for this a reminder once more, because sometimes we feel so discouraged that, are we going this way? Are we going that way? And as we have been learning with Spiritism in different Saturdays and different study groups, with different people with different walks of life, that it doesn't really only include science, but includes as well our heart, our determination to be human beings before all, instead of just thinking about the science. So thank you. Very great perspective on that you bring for us here. I would like to say thank you for all of those following us, as well, watching this amazing moment here with us, and all the hellos that we have had. But as we usual, we like to start with the questions and the comments as well, that connects us with this amazing message. So I would like to start with Yasko here, where she says, "Thanks for bringing this theme. I wonder if humans at present stage cannot know everything. It is difficult to fully experience faith based on reason, in science and knowledge. So some non-scientific trust on God or other superior entity must fill the gaps while we are slowly gathering knowledge, right? how Spiritism can help us, meanwhile, to build our faith. I know it's a little bit long there, but I'll give you some time to to think about
Process. Yeah, thank you, Yasko, for the question. And I actually, if you can keep the question, yes,
it. Uh-huh.
please. I also thank you for the question because I wanted to mention this. And Yasko is right. It's difficult for us to experience faith based on reason because of all these things that we do not know and do not understand. And I think what it's more beautiful about this idea, or the beautiful part about this idea, is that we can still experience faith in our stage of evolution, our stage of knowledge. We all here experience this faith. We all trust God, and the reasons can vary. Can be for your own personal experience, can be from a previous life's experience, and we don't know the reason, but we do experience that faith. And when we think that this faith will grow with knowledge, this for me is beautiful. This is amazing. This is what moves some of us forward. Imagine the faith that we have now, how huge and powerful that will be as we know more and more. So this is also the first part. And she's asking how spirituals can help us meanwhile to build our faith. I think that's the path. You should understand and accept our limitations and understand that there are so many things that we do not know. But as we learn, not only about the physical world, but also from our spiritual world, as we do in the SSB, studying spiritism, studying the teachings from so many uh, people that teach us. That's how we can build our faith through this studying, through this self knowledge, right? Is our self development.
And then I will share here a question from Daniel. And he says, "Thank you, Juliana. What do you think about those who believe only on things that can be proved by science? And in the same token, there are others that attribute everything to God and deny science." So one side believes in this and the other side believes in that, and that's it.
Yeah, what do I think, right? So it's what I think. The ones that deny science, I think it's more dangerous in the sense that we are denying our own reason, our own, and maybe danger is it depends on your level of denial, but you're denying your own uh, truth, deny who you are because you're being that can reason, and a lot of these can be because of the lack of understanding of the our physical world. You know, we all are in different levels of understanding, and some people they prefer to be blind and deny science as a way to feel comfortable. But that comfortable it's you're gonna not be forever. You're gonna be they're gonna feel discomfortable at some point and move forward. The ones that believes on only things that can be proved by science are the uh, skeptical people, right? The ones that uh, cannot only wanted to see the proof and follow the scientific method, and that's it. They also gonna learn at some point. So I wouldn't be worried much about neither of the extremes because they will confront with some at some point with either the spiritual world or the physical world, and they're gonna move forward.
It's a great reminder that you bring to us, right? That the when we have to confront with the actual extreme that we believe in, right? Because it gets to a point where if we deny this side and we hit a limit of our understanding, it's like, okay, where do I run to now, right? So the only way is for you to look for answers where you were not looking for before. And the same thing, again, it applies to both extremes. So this is a good perspective for us to think about it, even for ourselves when we are, running through situations that, okay, I cannot find the answer on this here. And I think it, to a certain extent, we have to give ourselves time because nothing evolves overnight. So that's a good way to put it. So thank you. And then this guy here, Leonardo here, asked this question. Can we say that our acknowledgement that we know very little is an attribute of a developed reason? In other words, knowing that we know very little, a sign is a that is a sign of development.
I'd say yes, it is. Because this understanding, if you think about the 19th century, when the modern science was like still like the beginning of development, it started with the 18th century, but because we are starting to developing more reasoning ways to explain the movements of the planets and our physical world, some people thought that, okay, we can explain everything. And then in the 19th century, when we start looking to quantum mechanics, general relativity, and this understanding in science changed the way that the whole society perceived the world. And then we kind of got humble again, and we say, wait, no, there are a whole new world of things that we do not know. And this is a signs of development, I would say so.
Thank you. And I think the key word here that you brought was this idea of being humble, right? I mean, and saying, okay, so let's keep faithful, because if we have found more than we knew before, guess what? Tomorrow, if we keep projecting ourselves into this new future, new understanding of who we are, and we are, at least to me, I would like to believe as well that we are developing ourselves or developing our faith more and more, because again, we get up in the morning and we say, okay, there's more than what we believed yesterday, right? So yeah, I thank you for
Yes.
the answer. And it's very interesting that you say that, being humble. Let's be humble. We don't know everything. I like the part
And
that you brought, that we're you brought the perspective of what we are as a planet, right, as a globe, compared to other planets, compared to the sun. So the things that we didn't know, and now we know a little bit more. So thank you for that. And then we have Paula.
and just one comment before the
Sure.
next question, because backing two questions before, I think Daniel, and we also have to understand that learning, it is a slow process. And each of us are going through different paths. Like, we have billions of people incarnated on Earth, and each of one is going through a different path. And for the ones that deny either science or deny what we believe to be the truth, uh, they will learn at some point. And sometimes, the point that I want to make, sometimes seeing is not the same of belief. It's not never is the same of reason. Seeing is not reason. Seeing is not understanding. We have people today denying science in the extreme, or saying that the Earth is not a globe. This person, there are many reasons for that. I don't want to extend, but even if you put this person in a spacecraft and they see, they might not understand. And the same for God. Even if a spirit or Jesus come and hear, even somebody see, it is not the same of understanding. They may be still in denial. I think the process of learning, it is that what requires us to be humble. It takes time. It takes a different path, and we're gonna get there. That's the goal.
Right. I thank you for that comment, because I came across a video the other day. I can't remember what it is now, and it's definitely out of my league in terms of what I study, what we do. But this gentleman was talking about on how our educational system doesn't even work or develops on how we learn, right? We are pushed to, through things, but we don't care on how this or that person or even ourselves um, um, retain information or gathers information, retains information, and processes. So there's very little study on this, directly with people. There may be studies behind it on how it happens, but it never brought to the school systems, for example. So yes, I mean, people learn differently, and people have different choices that may push them to certain areas. Obviously, we with Spiritism, we understand that it has to do with our past in certain ways. But yes, I'm glad that you're bringing this, because it allows us to be humble with ourselves too, right? That if we're not getting a certain aspect of life, hang in there. Just pray and have faith that things will get better. So thank you for that amazing reminder. And then Paula asks, has science always had its atheists, or is it? I'm sorry, or is this more true of modern times?
It's a good question. I don't know the numbers. Like, I think today people make the uh, they search and they ask people to see. Science has a lot of people that has different faiths. It is not true that science you'd be atheists or agnostics. One interesting that I heard not recently, it's been a while, but it's true. To deny God, to be an atheist, it needs as much proof than to believe in God. So if a person says it's atheist because it's science, you wanna ask him to prove that God does not exist. It is a concept that that it makes sense. So to deny it and to accept requires the same kind of proof. So I don't think it is a lot of science throughout history. Galileo Galilei is one example. He was very close to church. That's why he had all the problems with the church. So a lot of scientists through history, they had their own faith, and today it is still true. There are, I don't know the numbers, but I'm not sure. I'm not. I don't know for sure if it's a modern time. Maybe a little bit. Maybe because we know more people that says in social media and YouTube videos that, oh, we don't believe in things that we don't prove, and um, in their point of view, of course.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, and I
Yeah.
agree also. I think it has to do with also us, being a little bit more exposed to the feelings and ideals of others that, perhaps today our perception may be that we come across more atheists, right? Or people who doubt, which is okay to doubt. But I think it's, with the advance of technology, we get to know more. Whereas in the past, this was something that people kept to themselves, right? So I think nowadays, one of the beauty of all this is that people freely express themselves, saying, "Look, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that." So, which is good, I guess. It's that tells us that we have to work more to help one another, right, and develop
Yeah,
ourselves.
as long as we are searching for answers in and doing the basics of charity, which I think is the basics of helping each other and really wanting to make progress throughout good, we're gonna get there. So the beliefs can be different. That's
Right,
my
right. So thank you for that. And then Alba comes and asks, "Thank you, Juliana. Beautiful presentation. In your interactions with other scientific colleagues, how do you explain to them this relationship between reason and faith?" Wow, that's a good one.
thank you, Alba. Depends. Depends if the person is open. Uh, this is not a topic that we talk in the hallways of university, at least not in engineering. So I think most of us don't know each other's faith. But if somebody do, if it is open to talk, I will explain my point of view. and listen to what he has to say or she has to say. So I've heard comments, how can you be a physicist and believe in be a spiritism? But for me, it was everything so natural, so uh, one thing complete the other.
Mm.
There's no contradiction, and just in both sides just helped me to grow. So
That's great to complement one, one side with the other. That's really helpful because it shows to us that we have signs of balance, right? I think that the way I would like to call this would be to have a balance in our lives where we're not going to one extreme or the other. We have this balance, and it's okay to doubt. I think Spiritism, for the most part, gives us this ability to doubt, to question, and go after the answers. And if we don't have the answers, at least we know that with the studies and the findings that we have, or understanding that we gather, right? Because we don't, I like to also say that we don't find anything, we don't discover everything, but we develop an understanding towards a specific topic or not, that we look at it and say, you know what, let me keep going because perhaps it's not the time for me to know this or that. So thank you for that. And then we have Iracema saying, thank you so much, Juliana, for this great presentation. And then Paula comes and says and asks, do you think that once communication with the dead is scientifically verified, there will be a breakthrough in belief of the afterlife and possibly reincarnation? Good question.
good question. I think the answer is yes. Once communication is scientifically verified, that will be a breakthrough. Yes. How that going to happen when it is so hard? There are some people making research, and yeah, this is not my field, so it will for sure change the society as the same way that our discoveries or the things that we unveil, as Liu said, through science, through our understanding, change completely the way that society thinks about the world. Uh, Understanding about the afterlife and reincarnation process as something that it's natural in this universe will change completely the way that we interact with each other socially. And yeah.
That's a good question because it also reminds me of some of the books of the André Luiz series where we learn that from the other side there were development of certain machinery that allows individuals to speak right in the spirit world with others to connect. So it's only fair to say that these developments, as we reincarnate with these understanding from the other side, we will develop this machinery perhaps or other ways, or why not to truly develop ourselves as human beings, right? Where our connection with the spiritual world is more refined, right? We study
Yes.
in different areas that perhaps this will probably happen with the physical machinery. I believe you're going to say something. I'm sorry.
No, yes, I'm agreeing with you, and I just think that it's fascinating. I think because I grew up in the spiritism and having this scientific mind, if you can say that. My father teaches philosophy, so all of the readings in spiritism always brought philosophical questions at home too, and my mind was always like filled with these questions. I think it's just amazing that Spiritism tells us that it is tells us exactly what we know today. That our science has a long way in front of us to advance, and we will see things. We're gonna see more clearly things that we already see today, and then we can speak and more clearly understanding more things that we already see and that we already feel and we already are studying in SSB, for example.
Thank you. And then we have Chris who asks, excellent talk, Juliana. Spiritism tells us that the universe could not have come from nothing, that there must be be a superior intelligence behind its creation, i.e., both God and science. I guess you were just really making a comment when you were commenting about our connection with the Creator. Finally, the final question here, yeah, by Yasko. I wonder if by truly accepting and incorporating the teachings the evolved spirits brought to us and combining it with the account the regular or even suffering spirits bring in mediumistic meetings, would it help us to bring our faith on spiritual world and life that many don't accept yet? It's a little bit long, but I believe what she's trying to say is that the teachings that the higher spirits brings to us and the suffering spirits, the information that the suffering spirits brings to us, will probably help us be more faithful, right, on a spiritual world, on the spiritual life.
Um, yes, yes. We have this connection to things that are unknown, that we, and some of us as human beings can see, can hear, can reason about what we're doing, and we cannot explain, but they are bringing teachings, and they are bringing a broad understanding about where we are in this universe. And I say universe now, I'm saying physical and spiritual universe. So truly accepting and incorporating these teachings also involves to reason and seek for understanding what they're saying. So it's kind of the learning process that we have in school or the university. We don't want to tell students exactly what to do. We want them to absorb, and we want them to understand by themselves and get their own conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
So the professor is there just to guide them throughout their own path of knowledge. The same way that the superior spirits, they are here to guide us through our own knowledge. So yes, good comment.
Yeah, it brings me the question in your comments made me think also, like, how our mentors, right, in those higher minds who are involved with the scientific field, with our development, look at us, right, and how humble they are, or patience as well. I believe the right word would be to be patient with us as we are developing, right? As we are transforming ourselves, as we allow ourselves encourage ourselves or challenge ourselves even to learn more. And I believe in when I say this, I want to also include the scientific teachings as well as the moral teachings that we have to learn, observe, and process. Right. When I say process, it's put it to exemplify. And one thing that I would like to comment as for us to close here, Juliana, is that something that I heard from Haroldo Dutra once, that he was actually exploring this idea of the different sciences, right? That we tend to separate things a lot, and it's okay because fields are fields. There are different minds, or I guess we kind of connect with things a little bit more when we separate things into fields, right? I think it's just a human thing. But and I remember him saying that if you're a mathematician, right, or if you're a whatever field of life, and I'm kind of exploring more the scientific fields, right? These learnings, they're all God given, right? It's not something that man created, but God gave intelligence to us. So when I look at and I always refer to this, I love this chapter 9 of the book Nosso Lar, when there is an accounting done of the number of people that are, that there is an accounting system that works with mathematics that they had to eat. The chapter really talks about the nutrition, right? But they go over this idea of, because they had to deal with numbers, they were eating too much and all that. So there is a counting in the spiritual realm, right? If we go to the book, there's another book by Andrea Luiz that the mentor at the end, they go over this accounting of how many numbers, how many individuals reincarnate, sex and destiny. Sorry, they reincarnate with problems of, having problems related to sex, right? And how many of them go back to the spirit realm purified in terms of the issues that they had, how many goes back the same, how many goes back worse. So they have an accounting system. So sometimes when I talk to accountants and they I see their hard work, I'm like, this is God sent, because people who are accountants, guess what, they're learning something that perhaps they're going to be using on the other side. So it's all God given. It's not that we should separate. Perhaps one day, thousands and thousands of years from now, we will have these understandings in, like, it was so come natural, right? Perhaps tomorrow I'll be a physicist. When I say tomorrow, the next reincarnation, and then the following reincarnation I'll be a musician. It's all God sent. So that's one thing. And to pick your brains right now, as you mentioned, I mean, since you had the philosophical questions at home, what I would like to say is to thank you for this moment, and really I'd like to say that this is going to be the first one of many, is to ask you to say our final prayer so we can bid ourselves farewell, and until we meet again next time, and hope that everyone can look at this and say, wow, we have come thus far, and I'm part of this, right? We are all part of this. So that's a great moment. I thank you again for this amazing explanation and connection with us. And I'll let you go ahead and finalize with your prayer, please.
Thank you, Liam. So let's just calm ourselves, calm our minds, and thanks God at this moment. Thank you for the opportunities we have in our lives to understand a little bit more about our universe, both our physical and spiritual universes. Thank you for showing the way for our intellectual and moral progress. May your love touch our hearts and open our minds. May our faith and our science leads us to the path of charity. May our light, in any shape or any way that we still do not understand, enlighten us to love each other and help each other towards you. So be it.
Thank you, everyone. Until next time. Thanks.